Hi everyone, Bruce here at eTrailer. Today we're going to take a look at and install the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 air helper springs on our 2024 F-250. Have you ever loaded a heavy load in your truck and noticed it squatting down, or even put a heavy trailer onto the back of it and noticed your truck squatting down? If you have, you may be wanting to look into the LoadLifter 5000 series airbags. Is what that's going to do is when you do put that heavy load in, you're able to blow those airbags up and get your truck back level again, which will help in braking and your handling. Now, these air helper springs do have the load leveling capacity of 5,000 pounds. Now, what these actually do, it's going to replace your factory jounce bumpers, and there is actually a jounce bumper inside here. Now, you can have these airbags at 5 psi and blow them up to 100 psi. Now, what that means is the heavier your load is, in order to get your truck level, you may have to blow them up a little more. Now, it is recommended that you run them at 5 psi when you're not carrying a heavy load. One thing I do want to make a note of for you is this will not increase the load carrying capacity of your vehicle. All it's there to do is level out your vehicle when you do have a heavy load inside of it. Now, check your owner's manual and see what the capabilities of your vehicle are, and you're going to want to maintain that. Now, I do recommend, if you're going to do the airbags, go ahead and purchase the onboard compressor as well. The reason I'm mentioning that is, say you're heading to the hardware store and you're going to pick up a bunch of fertilizer or mulch or anything, and you throw it in the bed of your truck. Well, now you don't have a compressor to go ahead and level that vehicle out. So I highly recommend you get an onboard compressor, and then when you throw your load in, you can stand right outside your vehicle, right on your phone, and go ahead and level your truck. Now, as far as the installation goes, it really wasn't too bad, but I do have a lift, which makes it a little more simple. So if you're out on the driveway trying to do this, it may be a little bit more difficult, but it's still doable. If you don't want to try it out on your own, check out our dealer locator on etrailer.com. Or if you want to go ahead and do it at home, follow me, I'll show you how. Now we need to go ahead and remove the factory jounce bumpers. Now we are working on the passenger side. You're going to do the same thing to the driver's side. Now, taking a screwdriver, we do need to remove these studs out of the frame. So we're just going to pry on it and going to push towards the rear of the vehicle and get them snapped out of there. Like that. And you're going to do the same to the other side. Now, where we removed these studs for the jounce bumpers, we need to go ahead and put these captive nuts with the clips back in place so we can run some bolts in. So let's go ahead and do that. And if you grab a flathead screwdriver, it will make it a little easier to put them in. Just like that, and then we'll put one in the other hole as well. Now pay attention to the orientation. If you notice the front one, the open clip faces the front, and the back one, the open part of the clip faces the rear. Now grabbing our plate, the number on the plate is 07045. It's probably upside down to you, but that's the plate you want to grab right now. And if this elongated hole here needs to face towards the front, but this cutout right here also needs to face the inboard of the vehicle. So away from your tire, this will be on the inside. So this plate is actually going to go in just like this. But before we do that, we've got to grab our carriage bolts here. And we'll have 4 of those that we'll place right on top. And then we can grab our button head cap screws right here and go ahead and put these where we put those nuts. Now, grabbing a torque wrench, we're going to torque these down to the manufacturer specifications. If you don't have a torque wrench, we do carry them here at eTrailer, or you can rent one from your local auto parts store. Now, on the driver's side, we do have to move a line that's connected to the ABS bracket here. So this line right here, we have to pop out of its little keeper hole there, and then there's one here at the bottom. So you can get a pry tool or screwdriver or something, just pry that off like so, and then do the one on the bottom as well. You will not have to do this on the passenger side. Now we move those lines from the ABS bracket. We do have to grab the black bracket that's in our kit, and the number on that is 11177. And then you're going to grab the short nut, flat washer, and a flange nut. Now what we're going to do with the bracket, where we took that line down, we're just going to pull it down right here. That little button's going to go in that slotted hole, like that, and then this bracket's going to mount right here through this hole. This is on the actual axle, and again, this is the driver's side. You won't have to do this on the passenger side. We'll take our bolt, put it through, take our nut on the back side of that, and then we're going to want to go ahead and torque this down to the manufacturer specifications. So now we're just going to take a tie wrap here, just so we get this and make sure it doesn't get in the way of anything. We'll just take that and wrap that around, like so, just to hold that out of the way from hitting the airbag. Now it's time to go ahead and build our airbags up. Now I've already started the driver's side. I'm going to work on the passenger side now. The driver's side is going to be the same way, but this bracket will go on a little bit different, and I'll explain that here in a minute. So we're going to take our roll plate here, and the dished part is going to go towards the airbag. And if you notice, there's a big hole here, and that's where our air fitting is going to go. So we're going to grab our air fitting first, and we're going to go hand tight and then 1.5 turns after hand tight. So we're hand tight there. You're going to grab a 1/2 inch wrench, and we're going to go 1.5 turns. There's 1 and 1/2. Now grabbing our bolts. Now these bolts that we're using now are in a different bag, so just keep that in mind. You'll find them in a different bag along with the air fittings. So we're going to use a lock washer and a flat washer, and then we're going to grab our plate, and it's going to go on just like this. Grabbing our torque wrench, we're going to torque that down to the manufacturer specifications. It's a little bit difficult to hold it, but it's not super tight, so. Now we're going to go ahead, and we've got our driver's side assembled already. Now we're going to do the passenger side. It's going to assemble exactly the same way. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the airbag and we're going to just turn it over and grab another roll plate. And that's just going to set on top. Now we need to grab the lower bracket right here. Now, once we do this, make sure these flanges here are facing opposite of what the air fitting is on. So the air fitting is on the inside of this one. I want these brackets here facing the opposite direction. So we're going to take some carriage bolts, and it's going to go up underneath. And then we can go ahead and set this down on our airbag. Now we're going to grab our little short flathead screws and go ahead and put these in and tighten them down to the manufacturer's specifications. Now we're going to grab our bracket cup, and we are going to, this big hole here, one of our carriage bolts will go through there, and then the slotted hole, if you see that square hole, we're also going to take a carriage bolt, and that's going to go in just like this. Take our cup, line that up, and then we're going to take a flange nut and go ahead and just leave this loose because this does need to float for now until we get it actually mounted on the vehicle. Now you're just going to do that same thing to the other airbag. This is a final look at the airbags after they are assembled. So I just wanted to show you that so you've got them the same way. Just remember your fittings need to point towards the inside of the vehicle. And if you've got everything mounted properly, they should look just like this. Now that we've got all the brackets mounted onto our airbags, it's time to go ahead and install them up into the vehicle. Now, we've got a pull jack here, and what we're doing here is we're raising the body of the vehicle away from the axle to give us more room to get our airbag in. Now, another cool trick, if you are doing an onboard air compressor, you're only going to need one of these Schrader valves. You don't need both, so you can cut this Schrader valve line right here, and you'll have a piece just like this. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and push down on the airbag, and then we're going to stick our Schrader valve in there, and it's going to hold our airbag down, so it's going to give us a lot more room to be able to work once we get up underneath the vehicle. All right, so taking our airbag, you notice I've got the bracket here. That's going to go up against our leaf springs. So we're going to go ahead and take that bag and lay it up in here. Keep it in mind, we want to go on the, we're going to call this the back side of the brake line. This carriage bolt needs to go on the back side of that so we're not pinched up against it. Make sure this is all flat. And we're looking pretty good there. And now we can go ahead and grab our U-bolt, which is going to go in the top hole of our bracket. We're going to run that down through both sides. Now that we do have our airbag somewhat set in here, what I'm going to do is line our bolts up here like so, and then I'm going to release the Schrader valve, and our airbag's going to go up and right into those bolts. You'll have to guide it a little bit. So we're going to take our bottom bracket here that's going to go onto these carriage bolts here. Now keep in mind this cutout here, this half moon, that's going to go towards your axle. Then we're just going to go ahead and snug these up for now, and we'll come back and tighten them down later. Now when we do snug these up, make sure you try to do it evenly because you don't want one side pulling harder than the other. So now we're going to take 2 more flat washers and 2 more nylock nuts, and we're going to go on our U-bolt. Again, the same thing on this. We're just going to put it on here loose because we've got a few more bolts we got to get in first before we start tightening things down. Now we're going to take 4 of our flange nuts here, and they're going to go on the upper bracket right up here. And again, just hand tighten them for now. We'll come back by and tighten everything down evenly. Once you do get the bolts all kind of hand tied on there, what I like to do is go ahead and lower the body back down, and just gets it back to its normal position, and it helps line everything up as well before we tighten all the bolts up. Taking a 14mm, the first part we're going to tighten up is this U-bolt that's going back around the leaf spring U-bolts here. Now all we're going to do is just get that to where it's snug for now. We don't want to over tighten that. And we're just going to go side to side and get it even. And the way I get it even is I'm just going to watch these threads here and make sure I get those evenly on both sides. So what we did here was went ahead and snugged all these bolts up, and just like I mentioned before, just on these U-bolts here and these carriage bolts, make sure you tighten them evenly. If you notice, how I usually do that is I'll just measure from the bottom of the nut to the bottom of the bolt here and get it even on both sides before we actually torque them down. The same thing on our U-bolt up here. But right now we've got these snugged up, and we're going to go ahead and torque these to the manufacturer specifications. You can cut these bolts down if you'd like, and you could use a normal socket. I opted just to leave them hang. They're not going to bother anything. It'll just make it a little easier for you to torque them down if you don't have a crow's foot. Now, once you have this airbag done, all you got to do is do the same thing on the other side. There is a couple of notes I do want to make on the passenger side. If you look at our brake line here, you may have to push that in a little bit and just give it a little bend so it's not rubbing on our carriage bolt. The other thing we need to do is the kit comes with a little heat shield. Well, all I did was bend these tabs down a little bit. And the way this is going to go, we're going to put it over the resonator with some hose clamps, and it's going to sit like this with our hose clamps going around and tying in just like that. And the reason I'm showing it here, because it's actually, I got to put it on the back side of the resonator here, so it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to see. So we went ahead and mounted our heat shield here. Where you want to mount the heat shield is wherever the exhaust is the closest to the airbag, that's where you want to put it. Now, we had to go around the resonator, so they give you two different size hose clamps. Well, neither one of mine would fit around the resonator. So what I did was take the bigger hose clamp and connect it to the smaller hose clamp and made myself a bigger clamp. This one is the smaller clamp, and it's just going to go ahead, or this is the bigger clamp as well, and you're just going to tie it to there with the little ears that we bent on the actual heat shield. It's not going anywhere, and it will protect the airbag. Now that you've got your airbags mounted, we need to go ahead and run our airlines. Now, I'm going to show you how I routed them because it's a little different if you're not doing an onboard compressor. This particular vehicle, we are doing an onboard compressor, so the airlines are going to look a little different. But I'll explain that as we go along and show you how we routed our airlines. All right, so we've got our manifold here. And the top side here, this airline is going to run all the way back to our T-fitting, and we just ran along, and there's not much to tie to on this particular frame. They didn't have any wiring harnesses or anything, but if you just follow the black line going down, it's just going down the frame, and you're just going to have to find spots to tie into. And once we get towards the rear passenger side, you're going to see a T-fitting. And once we get to that T-fitting, I'll explain what's happening there. Now, again, this is for running an onboard compressor, running your airlines. So again, coming from our compressor, we're going to go to that T-fitting, and then out of the T-fitting, you're going to see a line come up over here, and it's going to go to our passenger side airbag. The other side of the T-fitting is going to come out, and it runs along as well, and it's going to pop out right back here. and that's going to catch our other side. If we run down here to another T-fitting right up here, you're going to plug in, and that line is going to run to a Schrader valve on the outside of the vehicle right above our license plate. All right, a couple notes here I do want to mention about cutting your airline. Now, I've got tubing cutters here. You do not want to use wire cutters or scissors because you will actually smash the tubing. Now, you can use a utility knife and place this on a hard surface as well and cut through it, but you want to make sure you do a nice clean cut like that. If you notice, that's a straight cut. We don't want any angled cuts like this because it won't fit into our fittings properly and it will create air leaks. So we could do a straight cut, and then to go into our actual fitting, I've got one here, and what you're going to do is take that airline, you're just going to push it in until it snaps. Just make sure it doesn't completely remove from the actual fitting. Now, using our app, we did go ahead and blow the bags up to 70 psi, and we're going to go ahead and take some soapy water, and where all of our connections are, we are going to check those for leaks. So on our particular case, we've got the T-fittings to check, so that's where we'll check first. And what you're looking for here is any big bubbles that are blowing out of those lines. If you don't find anything, any big bubbles, and don't forget to check the one up on top of the airbag as well. And what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to check all those connections. Plus, if you're doing an onboard air compressor, you're going to want to check those connections as well. Now, if you do find a leak, all you really need to do is just take that out like I showed you earlier. Take the airline out, give it a clean cut, and put it back in and go ahead and test it again. That does complete our installation of our Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 air helper springs on our 2024 F-250. I'm Bruce. Thanks for watching.